The man, the myth, the legend. Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, you know, the stock ticker PLTR, the one that just keeps going up and up and up. Well, anyway, he just gave one of the most amazing, phenomenal finance, stock-related interviews of all time. Not only did he give us a breakdown of what's going on in the market, a look into specifically AI, but he absolutely torched short sellers. In fact, he referred to them as bat crazy. I promise you, you're going to want to give this interview a listen because it is one of the best I have ever heard. Very quickly, just for a little bit of context, I am a Palantir supporter and investor. Yeah, every once in a while, I will actively trade it, but that's in a separate account. In my long-term investment account, I've been in Palantir for a bit, and I have no plans on getting out anytime soon. So am I a little biased? Well, probably, but I just want to be honest and forthcoming. Also, Palantir, as I'm filming this, is currently trading just below $190, which means right now its year-to-date gains are 146% after just hitting a new all-time high. Absolutely impressive. Also, just to give you a little bit of context for this interview, going into it, it is right after Palantir's most recent earnings, and it also became evident that Michael Burry, the guy who was kind of shown off in The Big Short, is actually betting against Palantir and some other AI names. You're going to need to know that going into this. It'll all make a lot more sense.
Palantir reporting third quarter results above expectations in a big way. The company issued better than expected fourth quarter guidance. Shares down in the pre-market this morning. We'll talk about that as well. But joining us right now is somebody we've been talking about, frankly, all morning. Alex Karp is with us.
Before we let him start talking, just once again, to give you even more context, Palantir reported their earnings. They beat on top and bottom line, and they improved their forward-looking guidance, and yet the stock took a pretty sizable hit, which is obviously why the CEO, Karp here, is pretty fired up.
Palantir CEO Alex, it is so good to see you this morning. We had your biographer on the broadcast before, and we're speaking about you now in third person, but now we're doing it in first person. The earnings were a blowout, I think, across the board. We can talk about maybe why the stock market reacting the way it is. But, you know, I was listening to the call yesterday, and I wanted to, just for those who didn't get an opportunity to hear it, I think you made some fascinating points about why you think this company and maybe even yourself are so misunderstood.
Well, there are lots of easy ways to misunderstand me. I misunderstand myself, and you know, funny. It's not like the super conventional playbook thing. Look, we're an anti-playbook company. If you want to do the personal version, I'm like this dyslexic, formerly and I believe currently still left of center, who actually sticks up for progressive values, which triggers, you know, TDS loving people, because I think the Democrats aren't no longer progressive. And then the company is built in a truly sui generis, unique way, which would only be possible in America, and actually explodes every assumption of how an expert would build a software business. The more you actually know about building software, the more odd, unique, and inexplicable our rise in success, and I would say domination on the enterprise software battlefield looks and is. And then I would say one of my main issues is Palantir, because we called a lot of things that are kind of establishment views that often are viewed as kind of being super woke into question in every single assumption of Palantir. The people who piled in to Palantir were people investing their own money, often people who are not in the investor class, non-experts. And even till today, the experts sit on the sideline and say, hey, this can't be true, while the average American who invested in Palantir, and for the first time, maybe arguably since World War II, average Americans got venture returns investing in Palantir. So you have this massive divide between the average person who evaluated themselves and the expert class that still was working on assumptions that have historically not been true, that obviously, if you look at the earnings, if you actually look at, we grew the company, I'll go through if you want to go through the numbers, but extraordinary results, yep. And then the expert class is weak-kneed, and the retail people are all in. So, but in fairness...
But that's what I wanted to ask you about, in terms of because there is a misunderstanding. Clearly, you know, you look at the analysts, most analysts, you know, think that this stock is overpriced. You have people like Michael Burry out there shorting it.
Very quickly, let me hop in here before we get into his response. from a price to earnings ratio, which was one of the most rudimentary ways to fundamentally evaluate a company, yes, Palantir is overvalued. But as we're about to hear throughout this interview, there are other ways to maybe look at the value of a company. And in fact, Palantir is looking really, really good. So it's not like this end all be all of just what is your PE ratio. And also in terms of like how he's talking about himself, yeah, super smart guy. He's a little bit eccentric, as he said already. He identifies as left of center, but kind of like that old school Democrat, not necessarily what we see now, to the point that because he used to be left of center, now that's apparently extremely right. And as you're going to hear throughout this, he's talking about TDS, he's from New York, so he's talking about the mayoral election that just was won by a socialist. This is going to get pretty spicy.
Everybody who's shorted the stock thus far has been on the losing end of it. And I'm trying to understand, just from, if you look at sort of the growth trajectory, the sales, how much of the sales, frankly, I think actually even there was a huge part coming from even existing customers, and just what the scale of this thing ultimately looks like in your mind.
Okay, there are two parts. Of course, when I hear short sellers attacking what I believe is clearly the most important software company in America, therefore in the world in terms of our impact, simply to make money, and trying to call the AI revolution into question, where we have this anomalous numbers, 114, rule of 40, et cetera. It just is super triggering because these people, they could pick on any company in the world. They have to pick on the one that actually helps people, that actually has made money for the average person, that is actually supporting our war fighters. Why do they have to go after us? And I'll tell you what, though, it's crazy motivating, because I'll tell you why the short sellers are constantly getting screwed by Palantir. Because every time they short us, we just are like tripling down on getting the better numbers, and part, honestly, to make them poorer. But okay, so
make them poorer.
The question of like the actual power of the business and what is it worth? I mean, at the end of the day, one of the things that is actually in the book, the biography, and that I actually think that you always have to ask is the person persuasive or are they right? And across all sorts of movements, political, I mean, you see this on the regressive part of the Democratic Party. We're about to probably have a complete disaster. I was born in New York. But if you actually said, do these things actually work? Everyone's like, of course I'm not going to vote for that. But instead they ask, does it work in theory? The theoreticians, you have to ask, how often have you been right? And Palantir is about pragmatic decisions that create unfair advantages for America and its allies. And on that, we've been right for almost 20 years on all major decisions, and I believe we'll be right going forward. Now, you could argue, I don't know, like they're constantly like, but they thought Palantir was overvalued at 10. They thought it was overvalued at 20. I'm not even here saying what the valuation is. I'm just saying find a company in the world that has a rule of 114, that has U.S. commercial growing at 121%, that aggregate growth in the U.S. is 77%, that has throwing off free cash flow in a way that's anomalous, and that is fully aligned with our customers.
He hits it with a little bit of jargon, so just to clarify, I remember back when Palantir a few years ago took a hit, bottom, and started to bounce and got back to $20 a share. All of mainstream media, financial mainstream media, was screaming that it was overvalued, which is uniquely funny because now it just hit $200. And also here and then throughout the interview, you're going to hear all these different rules such as like 112, 40. Feel free to look them up, but just in a general sense, when I always thought about 112, oh geez, now I got to think about it. It's how long will it take to triple your money? So it's kind of a growth rate thing. And then the rule of 40, which is very, very important when it comes to Palantir, it's going to be related to its margin versus its growth. And it's one of the few companies that scores super, super well in both. So in general, for both of these, the better the number, the better what's going on with the company, just so you know.
And you figure out the value, but they're in the business of being skeptical and being wrong, and we're in the business of giving an unfair advantage to American workers, American warfighters, and our investors.
Hell yeah, brother.
Is a very difficult place to be because you can lose everything, right? You can drive these people into the ground.
Thank God.
Like that. Michael Burry put a really big bet on it. It's almost $1 billion. It's $912 million. That's a big step for him to put into that. When you say you redouble your efforts, what do you do? What do you go back in?
Well, first of all, he's actually putting a short on AI. So the way I read it was us and NVIDIA, and it's like
the biggest position is you, though. I'm just looking through all of his shorts.
Okay, So, and then, by the way, with the shorts, it's very complex. It's not even clear that, honestly, I think what is going on here is market manipulation. We delivered the best results anyone's ever seen. It's not even clear he's not doing this to get out of his position. I mean, these people, they claim to be ethical, but, like they're actually shorting one of the great businesses of the world. And I'm not against shorting as a matter of theory, but I'm just saying pick something that is not doing a noble task. And, it's us against them. And that's a good position for us. I mean, look.
In terms of Michael Burry's actual position, make sure you stay tuned to the end of this video because I'm going to show you what it is and add a little bit more context. That's not important right now, but if you're really paying attention and you want to know what it is, a lot of people are completely misinterpreting the 13F filing.
We're printing a rule of 114. Again, people who aren't technical, I think roughly an incredible score, like an Olympic grade score on rule of 14 is like 50. I mean, that's roughly like if you're between 50 and 7, you're an Olympic athlete, a unique implement athlete. This is like Michael Phelps like score, like Michael Jordan. Like there are no scores like this. And 121 growth off of almost a 1.5 run rate in U.S. commercial and a 77% growth in the U.S. and an aggregate off of an aggregate base of $4.5 billion. By the way, I predicted we'd get here. So, it's like, if you want to short that, be my guest. You go ahead. We're just going to go do our things. I mean, look, I'll tell you, there's a tale of two cities in our society. We need experts versus retail. And you see it like, I don't know why these newspapers are helping Mandani win. I don't know why we can't have honest discussions about our future. I don't know why we have to allow fentanyl attack, but it's almost always sympathy for the expert that doesn't need it, the short seller that has some ridiculous reason for doing something against. I mean, most of GDP growth in this country is because of AI. The real question is, how do we grow that and expose workers? What is the worker available GDP? That's the question for our society. Instead of aligning on that, we've got these completely, and again, if the numbers weren't there, great, be my guest. But then the numbers are there. So then it's not even clear he's actually shorting us. It's probably just, how do I get my position out and not look like a fool? I don't know. But I do think this behavior is egregious, and I'm going to be dancing around when it's proven wrong.
Right. Alex, we've heard a lot of talk from the likes of a Michael Burry, but more broadly about whether we're in an AI bubble, whether the economics make sense. Clearly, in the context of Palantir, they do make sense insofar as you're printing money over there. Not everybody in the AI space is printing money in the same way, and they're spending an enormous amount on chips, data centers, and the like. How do you see the broader space right now in terms of just how things are developing?
There are two subtle issues in AI. What is the addressable market, and what is the addressable market for things that work? Meaning you make more money and the quality of the money is higher. So top line and bottom line grow. Palantir, we're in the business of a part of the addressable market where it works and it can be quantifiable, either commercially or on the battlefield. So clearly, and over time, you're going to have Pareto optimality, meaning that every part of the stack is going to have to create more value than they charge. That's just obvious. And if that doesn't happen, it will be a bubble. And, I'm sorry, short sellers can't tell the difference between products that work and products that don't, but these numbers should show you that there's a part of the market that, to you, quote you, is printing cash, and it looks like that part of the market is the part we own. There's a separate question, by the way, which I think is equally relevant. What part of the GDP growth is available for workers? What we call worker available GDP. And that's like one of the unique things about Palantir is whether it's on the battlefield, like the people writing the scripts for these very complicated operations, or building batteries or doing things on the factory floor are being enhanced by our product. And those two questions are going to define arguably the future of what happens in this country. Does GDP grow because of AI, which only can happen if there's Pareto optimality, or in what the way we see it, the customer pays less than the value they create, which is abnormal, not exactly equal Pareto optimality. And that, it's unknown, honestly. You have this massive growth, but currently, as far as I can tell, the two companies he's shorting are the ones making all the money, which is super weird. Like, the idea that chips and ontology is what you want to short is bat crazy.
Well, there you have it from the CEO of Palantir betting against two of the most popular stocks in the market, especially in retail, NVIDIA, NVDA, and Palantir, PLTR. Batshit crazy to be betting against two of the companies that are so popular and are actively printing money. Now, with all of this in mind, there are a couple things I have to say. First of all, I agree. I have no issue with shorting because that's what free markets are all about. If you think something is overvalued and you want to put your money where your mouth is, hey, have at it. Of course, I think legal, legitimate shorting is fine. I think there is a point where it gets into the realm of manipulation, but obviously that's for a different video. I don't obviously support that. It's illegal, but I'm not generically against shorting. As a trader myself, of course, I'm not going to bet against the strongest ones in a stable. If anything, I wanted to be against AI, I would find the weakest ones and bet against those, because if it were to fall, those ones would be the ones that fall first. But for whatever reason, Michael Burry, who was shown off in The Big Short, played by Christian Bale here, recently came out in his 13F filing that he is betting against Nvidia and Palantir and a few others, and it's causing the internet, specifically Twitter, FinTwit, to go absolutely haywire. But I do want to add a little bit of context. If you look at Scion Asset Management, which is Mr. Burry's, you're going to realize that these are all put positions. So even though it shows 5 million shares, since it's a put position, it's only 50,000 puts. So this is just like, you have to move the decimal over too. So a lot of people are going to see stuff. He's betting 66% of his portfolio. That's actually inaccurate, because once again, these are puts and the money he's spending is a far lot less than the notional value. So yes, is he betting against him? Yeah, he is long puts right there. But to clarify, it's not forced to be reported here if it's a spread of some sort. So if he ends up having a different position, that wouldn't be shown off here. It's just showing he is long Palantir puts, Nvidia puts, he has PFE calls and HAL calls for whatever reason. But always when you're looking and you realize that it's stock, but then it's a derivative and options contract, you have to move the decimal over. So I'm seeing some misreporting there. And also, if you're watching this, there's a good chance you just care about Palantir. I want to let you know that the short interest isn't that high. Right now, as I'm recording this, it's around 2%, 2.2%. But remember, that is just based on the direct stocks being bet against it. It doesn't count the options market. I know we're getting a little bit nuanced here, but hey, you made it to the end of the video, so I figure you deserve a little bit of extra information. So hope that clears some things up. But yes, that was one of the most exciting interviews, and I have to agree with Dr. Karp there. You have to be bat crazy to bet against some of the best stocks of all time. As always, I would love to get your thoughts in a comment below. I appreciate your time. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.